Today I'm visiting two remaining old synagogues in Shanghai. One of them is open, although it's not an active synagogue, the Ohel Moshe synagogue, which is now, as you can see here, the Shanghai Jewish Refugees Museum. And the other synagogue, which is a little bit away from here, is an active synagogue, the Ohel Rachel synagogue. And these synagogues are two remaining ones of 6 that were originally in Shanghai. So this is the Ohel Moshe synagogue, and it was also known as the Ward Road synagogue. As it was moved, it was located originally on Ward Road, and it's now, which is now called Changyang Road. And it was built in 1907, and in 1927 it was removed to the current address. This is the main prayer chamber. Here there are very beautiful stained glass windows in this synagogue depicting various religious aspects, scenes from Israel, palm trees, Jewish menorah. So this is where the Torah would be held, and apparently there was a gift of a Torah given to this synagogue by the people of Israel as a sort of gesture of friendship between Israel and China. It's not a very big facility to sit in. It's actually quite intimate. Around 4 rows, so you can't actually fit all too many people. You can sit down here. You can imagine Jewish worshippers originally sitting here and praying. And behind me here you have sort of a museum, pictures and artifacts, very well presented, of the history of Jews in Shanghai, which is a very rich history. This is a very interesting piece of history here in the synagogue, is some of these Jewish artifacts. A menorah, a plate, a silver plate for Seder on Pesach. Here we find a shofar that would be blown by Jews on Yom Kippur. Actually, the front of the synagogue is behind me, but it's at the back here that you get a view of the entrance into the museum, and this rather interesting sculpture depicts Shanghai as a haven for the Jews that fled persecution in Europe. You have a very interesting wall which has names of Jews that were saved, that fled to Shanghai. So very interesting to see all these names across the whole wall. It's quite a long wall. Then over here we have the actual museum, so we're going to go inside of the museum and see. So that was the actual synagogue part, and here's the museum. Books that were taken, pictures. These are artifacts that Jews took with them. This map depicts how the Jews fled from Europe to Shanghai, through Italy, from Siberia, and some of them went through the south, as you see, and some through the north. There were actually three main influxes of Jews. The first was in the 1840s. The second was in the early 1900, and then the last one was in the 20s and 30s, when there was all the upheaval in Europe. A very interesting Jewish wedding dress that was used by a Jewish woman, who then donated it to the museum. And what's interesting about this dress is that it is very Jewish, but also has Oriental influences, both in the way that it's designed, particularly at the top, if you see, and the fact that it has sort of Oriental style pattern on the fabric. Mr. Jerzy and Evelyn Shapiro, who fell apparently in love on High Holy Day, and you have pictures of them, of their wedding. Typical belongings of the wandering Jewish refugee. Here's a very interesting card. It's a Hanukkah greetings card, which is shows you how the Jews came here to China and mingled with the Chinese. They kept their own Jewish culture, but they also wanted to integrate somewhat into Chinese society. You see by the font also very Chinese influence, and the blue and the white almost copying like that China. This is from 1945. The blue and the white almost looking like traditional Chinese blue and white porcelain. So here's a very interesting map of Shanghai, an interactive map of Shanghai from the 1920s and 30s. And if you press on one of these buttons down here, and this one that I showed my finger on, that shows you where the synagogue was, there. And then it gives you a very nice view. Interactive maps, they're really cool. And behind me here we have a little bit more history about what happened to the Jews once the war ended. Most of them left because they didn't want to live through the civil war that was going on in China at that time, but also most likely they didn't want to stay in a country which the system changed to communism. So right across the road from the Ohel Rachel synagogue is an old sort of tea coffee house that has been rebuilt. It was actually ripped apart, but they rebuilt it. And this is where Jews would come in Shanghai to socialize. Very beautiful inside. I've arrived at the Ohel Rachel synagogue behind me, and it's unfortunately not able to go in, but it is an active synagogue. Jews do observe some services here, Purim, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. So this synagogue was built by Jacob Sassoon in 1920, and it was one of many synagogues here in Shanghai built, but only two remain, the Ohel Moshe and this, the Ohel Rachel synagogue. And it's in the Greek Revival style, sort of inspired by Sephardic synagogues in London. Sandstone, granite, a very, very beautiful old synagogue, different than the Ohel Moshe synagogue, in that this one seems to be a little bit more traditional, something like you'd see in Europe. Okay guys, that concludes the trip to the Jewish part of Shanghai, the Ohel Moshe and Ohel Rachel synagogues, the Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews that came here to Shanghai. So I hope you enjoyed the movie. Make sure to like and subscribe to my channel, and until next time, bye!